Hey y'all, I have something that I want to share. Um, and so first, I want to start with a dream that I had some time ago, and it's really awesome. I was in some sort of, I wrote down ship. Uh, yeah, it was like a ship. Honestly, it was really kind of like a spaceship, not like a moving on the water ship. And there was this Polynesian man who was the pilot. And so we were, moving, I'm guessing horizontally. And then all of a sudden, he was like, he's going to take us up north. And he switched gears. And immediately we started like shooting like vertically up, like so fast. And he was talking about some people who were not native to the land or something like that. And then I remember when we shot up, I remember feeling so overwhelmed with the emotion, with the reality of God's greatness. I don't even know how to explain that, but that's what I was feeling, right? And the dream ended. So I want to write down some of the symbolism in the dream so this will make sense. And it's taken me a while, but God is the one who gives the interpretation, because there's no way I could have made sense of this. So the whole idea of this dream was about heaven and Christians being foreigners on the earth. Our true citizenship is in heaven. And so I'll give you a couple examples. From the Bible, in Philippians 3:20, it says, our citizenship is in heaven. First Peter 2:11 talks about us being temporary residents and foreigners and being careful how we live our life around our neighbors, not being into a whole bunch of debauchery and foolishness, right? In Psalm 119:19, David says, I am a stranger in the earth. And so when you go to break down the Hebrew word for stranger, it means foreigner, temporary inhabitant, right? So uh this dream was really talking about, so let me break down the symbols. So the Polynesian man, that took me a minute, and I ain't gonna hold you. Just when I was sitting in the car, I just understood why the man was Polynesian. I didn't understand why, because I don't know no Polynesian people. I don't think I do, even though I would like to. But he was Polynesian, and so that was a symbolism of someone who lives on an island, because of I think it's called Polynesia, is the group of Polynesian islands, right? And so I remember some months ago I heard Holy Spirit say Heaven's Island, Heaven's Island, and I was like, what? And it's this idea of heaven being separate, or a separate space, or a separate realm. um and I remember sometime around when I heard Heaven's Island, I think I was asking Holy Spirit, like, tell me about this death thing. Like, it sounds wild to ask, but like I really want to know. And so he started talking to me about this idea of an island. And so maybe I was asking about someone specific, maybe not someone specific, but just this idea, right? And he was talking about, well, he said they'll be in Heaven's Island. And I was like, Heaven's Island. So, this idea of an island, we know that an island is a piece of land that is separate from the land mass, right? It's literally surrounded by water. So, this idea of separation. And Jesus talks about it. He talks about it in Luke 16:26. I think this is the story of Lazarus, the poor man, and the rich man, one of them. So Jesus is saying, so the rich man basically lived his life in pleasure on the earth. He had everything he could want, and the poor man had nothing. He was a beggar, he just wanted the crumbs from the man's table. And so when they died, the rich man went to hell. And I had a dream, but I did my last video. I was talking about hell. Y'all, it's so many people going to hell, y'all. It's crazy. Um, so the rich man went to hell, and the poor man went to heaven. And so the rich man was like, oh man, um it's just so terrible here and it's so hot. Please let Lazarus, the poor man, just dip his finger in some water and put it on my tongue. Like, it is terrible here. And this is where Jesus says, Luke 16:26, between us and you is a great chasm that has been fixed in order that you wouldn't pass here to us and we can't pass there to you. So it's this idea of heaven being separate, a separate realm, a separate reality still existing as at the same time as hell as well. Right? So that's why the man in the ship who was the pilot was Polynesian. It's this idea of heaven being separate, Polynesian islands and island. There we go. And then the fact that he was talking about people that were not native, or were not natives. It's this idea of being a foreigner or a visitor on earth. The Lord was speaking to me and he was giving me helping me to really comprehend the idea of not that earth is not my final destination. It's not even my home. It's not where my citizenship is. All of this stuff is so lofty and so wild, but it is so true, right? So he gave this idea of being a tourist here on earth, or being an immigrant, right? I had a dream, and I think I did a video about it, of me seeing some people who had given up their citizenship in their home country and they were going to another land. And I knew in that other land where they were immigrants, they had like plots of land or like gardens that they had to cultivate and develop. It's brilliant. Um, and so it's this idea that the fact that the Polynesian pilot was talking about people who were not native is this idea of us being visitors on the earth. And so I think I wrote a couple of verses about that. I thought I did. Hmm, interesting. Oh, duh, I already told y'all that in the beginning. Philippians 3:20, our citizenship is in heaven. First Peter 2:11, we're temporary residents and foreigners. And then Psalm 119:19 talks about I am a stranger in the earth, and a stranger meaning a foreigner or temporary inhabitant. Sidebar, I'm not really gonna go on a rant. There are several commands in the Old Testament that God gives Israel about how to treat the strangers. And I never really understood that. But he was talking about how Israel was to treat the foreigners, um, that inhabited that they lived with, or that they were in community in a way with, that lived among them. Even though Israel followed God, they didn't follow the customs of foreigners. There's still this expectation that God has placed on them on how to treat those who are not Israelites. I'm just saying what's happening in Gaza and Palestine and all of that. Moving on, God feels a way about that. Trust me, He sees that, and yeah, I'm not going there. Anyway, moving along, right? So it's this idea of being a foreigner, heaven being this on earth, heaven being this separate space, this separate realm, this quote unquote island, right? And then remember, I told you I was in a spaceship, and immediately we went north. The man was like, I'm about to take you up, I'm about to take you to the north. And immediately the spaceship went vertical and just started flying up. And not that idea about north and up is this idea of the heavens, right? The sky, or above the sky, above the clouds, this idea of the heavens, the heavenly realm, being up, being high, being a high place. Also, it could, if you have dreams with mountains in there, it could be God wanting to teach you and tell you about heaven. It could be a call to pray. A lot of times in the Bible, when men would want to speak to God, to petition Him, or just to go up and worship Him, they would go to a high place, which would be a mountain. And there they would commune with God. And so Moses did that when he left the Israelites for 40 days. He ascended a mountain. Who else ascended a mountain? I believe Balaam, when he was trying to curse the Israelites, ascended a mountain, right? There's just these themes, these ideas, this idea of the heavenly realm being a mountain or a high place, or the heavens going up north, right? So that's a little bit of the imagery. And so this is what the Lord is saying. He wants us to pay attention or realize the fact that earth is not our home. And it sounds so lofty, like I said, it sounds so spiritual, right? But there is a real call for us believers and those of us who are coming into the faith, curious about the faith, to realize that earth is not earth is not all there is, and one day we will be up out of here. And so he began speaking to me about hedonism. And so I had a faint idea of what it was, but let me give you a definition. Or hedonism is the philosophy that pleasure and happiness are the highest good, right? And then uh, he took me to Proverbs 15:17. It says, better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fattened calf with strife or with hatred. Better is a dinner of herbs. So it's better that you sit down with some some lettuce, some salad, um, and there's love there, than to sit in front of a fatted calf, or let's say, how could we put it in modern terms? Some wagyu, some lamb, just this luxurious feast in front of you, but there's no love there. There's strife and there's hatred. Uh, the fact is that love and things that are truly good only originate from God, only originate from the Most High. We have so many things here that could give us a temporary feeling of the type of goodness, that type of the thing you're looking for or you get when you go and you eat a really good meal. You go to like a fine dining restaurant, and just the way, the texture of the food and the aroma of the foods, and just that whole experience is so pleasurable. um, but it is nothing compared to having a relationship and intimacy with God. That's why when I was in the spaceship and I went up north, I was overwhelmed by God's power, by his goodness. I'm telling y'all, nothing can compare to it. That's why I think he's talking about this idea of hedonism, this idea of being so fixated on pleasure, or even just the idea of pleasure, earthly pleasure. What's pleasurable here? A real good meal, a real good meal, or maybe sitting down and zoning out on binging your favorite TV show, or even falling in love. That's so pleasurable, right? It's this idea that these things have no comparison, and we are fixating ourselves, our focus on these things, because we don't have a revelation or even a curiosity about what comes after this temporary space in earth. Just from the little that he's allowed me to experience, and I don't even know how to really put it in words, there is no comparison to God's love. I remember one day I woke up and I felt God's love, and it's like between the dream realm, and when you wake up, I felt it. When I tell you, it was overwhelming, and I say this all the time, but if that love that I felt that day had a flavor, the flavor would be compassion. It's like looking at someone, maybe looking at a homeless person who's really just in a bad place, or at a child who's hurt themselves. It was a deep kind of love that I knew was overwhelming, and I knew that a human could not uh, produce that type of love, right? And then that feeling faded away. So it's like we're trying to, not all of us, and I low key feel like he's calling me out and coming for me a little bit, which is fine. He's right. He's right. I get it. But it's this type of pleasure, goodness that a lot of us search for, go after, that will not compare, that is so earthly, and that is very, 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 very temporary, right? There's no comparison to what those of us who are not just Christians, because I was a lukewarm Christian, baby. I'll tell you, I was gonna bust hell wide open and be confused while I was there. So, but those of us who really truly try to surrender to Christ and man, obey him, right? There's no comparison. I think Paul says Is it Romans that there's no these light temporary troubles that we face? There's no comparison to what we will experience um, when we get to heaven ultimately, or when we leave this earth and we're with God. So also I want to talk about it. Well, it's the same point, but this idea of our emotions. And so let me tell you what I heard. I heard your belly, and then I heard your emotions. And it immediately took me to the idea in the Bible that the seat of your emotions is in your belly. You know how some people feel like, oh man, I feel it in my gut, man, or man, I had a gut instinct, like the seat, like the central command center of your emotions is in your belly, not necessarily in your mind. And I believe this idea is true because one, the word says, as the Bible says, and God knows what he's talking about. He created the body. But also the idea of the microbiome in uh, gut. Our gut health is directly linked to our mental health. Whole another topic, kind of, but it's this idea that we are trying to satiate our emotions with our belly, symbolically and literally. So a lot of us, we eat. We got to feel for something nice. I'm like, after we eat a meal, I need something sweet. It's this idea of trying to satiate, trying to get that feeling of goodness that is so temporary. And after you eat it, you're back again at whatever place you were emotionally. There's no real lasting satisfaction. Eternity, heaven is eternal. It's a perpetual uh feeling of goodness. And y'all, it makes me think it's all really kind of coming together, and I'm so thankful. I remember, I think I spoke about it. I had a vision. The first vision I had, and it was incredible. I was in my bed, then I went up to use the restroom. And in the restroom, I saw what was like, I can't even describe it. It was like a palm sized little box of light, but not like light bulb light, not even like sunlight, but like a different kind of light that was extremely bright. And I saw the outline of a person's face. I was like, yo, this is wild. And then I felt what I can only describe as, and hear me when I say this, the idea of nirvana, right? The idea of this ultimate uh thing to be attained, this ultimate idea of wholeness and peace and euphoria. And I'm not saying it is nirvana, but I'm saying that it was like that. If I had to try to find a word that was similar to it, ultimate peace, y'all. When I tell you, y'all want to go to heaven. Oh, y'all want to go to heaven. Oh, please, please go to heaven. I felt, when I tell you, the words that came to me were limitless. It felt like there was no such thing as fear, no such thing as anxiety, no trauma, trouble. What even is that? I felt like if I set my mind to do something, I could do it. I felt like there was nothing that could weigh me down. It just felt euphoric. That's heaven. So the fact that we are trying to produce or reproduce these pleasurable feelings from whatever it is. I don't know if it's, drugs, or if it's alcohol, or if it's relationships, or if it's food for a lot of us, sex for some of us, whatever this thing that you're trying to feel, you're not going to get it here on earth. Well, you can actually have it here on earth if you have a relationship